All right, so we'll jump now into the third section of the presentation. So more of our strategic approach. We've reviewed Google advertising as a whole, meta ads. We've dove deep into the terminology, the KPIs that we utilize as well. So now we're going to basically have a more fundamental understanding of the paid media team and what we do and our strategic approach for all ad accounts that we run. So I want to start just with the pre-launch process. I think there's not a ton of insight into what paid media does before the account launches. So once we begin onboarding and we get the budget and such and get all the details of the ad account, where the property is and such, this is when we'll start the first step, which is keyword research. This is where we're going to review your website. We'll review competitor websites, any information that your team provides to us in terms of who you're trying to target, places of interest in the area. We'll research all those keywords on SEMrush, which is a platform that lets us view keyword search volume, average cost per click for each keyword. We'll review all those keywords and research all those search queries and create a baseline keyword list that we'll implement into the account once it launches. So again, this is really helpful for making sure we're targeting the right audience from the jump. If an apartment community is luxury, we'll make sure to include luxury apartments in wherever the apartment community is in. If it's a student community, we'll make sure to look for off-campus housing, apartments near whatever university the community is near. So this is really important, kind of building that baseline for the ad account. Once we create the keyword research, ad copy creation comes next. This is where we'll create ad copy for each individual ad group that we have running. So each keyword essentially has a slightly different ad copy than the other keywords. Each ad group is encompassing a subset of keywords that are all related to each other. So we might have slight variations. Say if we had an apartments in Atlanta ad group, we might have keywords that are apartments in Atlanta, Georgia, apartments in Atlanta, apartments in ATL. So just slight variations, but they're all generally trying to target the same users. So for each ad group, we'll have a totally different ad that's going to be served for users. This is where we'll create the ad copy, gearing it specifically towards that audience that we're trying to target for that ad group, which just helps us push the relevant verbiage to the relevant audience as well. The next step, once we complete the ad copy and the keyword research, this is where we'll upload the ad template through Google Ads Editor. This is where we take the ad copy and the keyword research from our Google Sheet that we created in. We upload it through Google Ads Editor. That allows it to be implemented into the ad account that we've created specifically for that property. This is also where we'll implement extensions, so those image, location extensions that I talked about previously, and also location targets as well. We're going to set up the targeting radius for the property as well, and the city targets that I talked about too. Any questions on these first three steps? Awesome. And then comes tracking implementation. This is a lot of the granular stuff that we do, creating the relevant triggers so that when someone submits a form on the landing page, it's tracked properly. When someone makes a phone call, it's tracked properly and such. So this is where we make sure all those call tracking and form submission tracking is set up correctly. And it's also where we'll confirm test leads as well. We'll send those test leads out through the form submission on Meta and on Google, just to make sure the CRM and tracking and such is working properly. And then that's really the last step. Once we confirm all of that and make sure everything's working properly, we'll launch the ads and then begin our next process, which is our next aspect of our strategic approach, which is the 30, 60, 90-day process. The approach we use for all new ad accounts, the 30, 60, 90 refers to specific milestones. So the first month is the 30-day milestone, the second month the 60-day, and then the 90-day is the last milestone, which is 3 months out post-account launch. Mainly, we use this structured approach to make sure Google has enough time to gather its data at the initial launch phase, make sure we're optimizing based on the conversion data, and we're not optimizing too early or on too little conversion data. And then also making sure we organize the ad campaigns based on performance. There might be certain campaigns that we end up pausing after the 90-day phase, but we want to give each campaign each ad group and each keyword enough time to perform before we make any substantial changes. And this will kind of outline what we do at each milestone. So 30 days post-launch, in that first 30 days, we don't touch the account. We'll review it and monitor it to make sure there's no issues and that everything is serving properly. But in terms of changes to keywords, ad copy, and such, the first month, we usually leave the account relatively untouched to make sure it can gather a baseline amount of data before we make any sort of changes. At the 30-day launch point, we'll increase the bids for keywords that are performing well. So because bids will increase and decrease based on competition, if we have keywords that are performing really well and converting at a high rate, but we need to make sure we stay on top of how much we're spending on those keywords, we'll increase the bids to say instead of spending $2 on that keyword, we're willing to spend $3 on that keyword if it's performing well. We'll review the ad copy, pin any sort of headlines or descriptions based on performance. So we might have specific headlines or descriptions that are performing really well when they're served on certain ads. We'll make sure those headlines or descriptions are served on every ad since we're seeing really strong performance. And then we'll run through the search terms report that Google offers us. The search terms report is basically every search query that our ads are scoring for. Any search that is conducted that our ad appears for will come in that search terms report. If there are negative search terms, so apartments under $1,000, if there aren't any apartments under $1,000 for that property, income-based apartments where the property is not an income-based community, we'll make sure to add those negative keywords, those search terms to the negative keyword report and making sure we're staying on top of that to elicit to block any sort of unqualified traffic or leads that may come through. For the 60-day launch phase period, at that milestone, we'll change bidding strategies from the enhanced CPC, where we're manually changing those bids, to maximize conversions. Again, this is contingent on the account having enough conversions, but generally after 60 days, we see it reach that mark. We'll pause underperforming keywords and ad groups based on the performance that we initially see. And then we'll update headlines and descriptions as well for the ads that are not meeting KPIs at the 60-day period. And then 90 days post-launch, this is where we're going to review the location targets. So we'll look at how well the radius is performing relative to the city. We'll also look at additional locations that we may want to double down on in terms of performance. We'll review and refresh the call to actions that we have active in the account as well, in addition to the images and the call to actions on the landing page. So if there's any sort of big changes that we need to make to the landing page, if conversion rate isn't as high as we'd like to see, or isn't meeting KPIs, that's where we'll make the changes there. And then we'll also add additional campaigns. This is where we might implement the Performance Max campaign in that 60 to 90 day window. We might add a display campaign based on the property goals that we currently have. And that's 3 months out post-launch. And then just to wrap this section up, I wanted to give insights into what our Google KPIs are. I talked about these briefly in the terminology section, but for click-through rate and conversion rate, 5% is our KPI. Again, above industry average and above Google ad average as well. We keep a really high standard, and we like to meet really high standard level goals. Cost per conversion, we'd like to keep that below $100. Again, similar to click-through rate and conversion rate. A much better measurement than other multifamily services as well as Google Ads in general. And for Meta, they're slightly different. The core Meta KPIs, we like to keep click-through rate above 3.5%. Our cost per click, we like to keep that below $1. And then cost per lead, we'd like to keep that below $50 since we're more likely to see more leads come in general through Meta. And these are all measurements we use to determine account success across the board. Any questions on any of the KPIs? All right, and that's where we'll break for lunch.